Chris Harmer now joins us. He is a senior naval analyst at the Institute for the Study of War, and he's joining us from Washington. Chris, first off, give us a lay of the land, or a lay of the Gulf, if you will. Just what's the military presence like in there, and how easy is it for a boat to drift into Iranian territory?
You know, this is like a bad trip down memory lane for me. I've done 5 deployments to the Persian Gulf. I was stationed at U.S. Navy 5th Fleet in Bahrain for about 18 months. And I hate to admit, but I personally have violated Iranian airspace on a number of occasions, inadvertently, of course, but it's because Farsi Island is right in the middle of the Persian Gulf. Airways go past it, sea lanes go past it. It's very easy for us to unintentionally violate that. Now, there's a 12-mile circle around Farsi Island. If you get just on one side of that, you're in violation of that airspace. And normally what it is the U.S. Navy monitoring itself. Some of these radar-guided cruisers and destroyers will call up and say, hey, you are straying from your path, get back out. Happens all the time. All of my pilot friends who knew I was coming on this morning said, gosh, how I hate flying around Farsi Island because you always are violating airspace. Now, it looks to me like what happened with these sailors was they were transiting small boats, they had a mechanical malfunction, and they drifted into Iranian territorial waters. I don't think there was anything malign in their intentions. I just think their boats suffered a mechanical malfunction. So the reality is, in the Persian Gulf, there are an awful lot of ships and aircraft operating in close proximity to territorial waters, and these incursions do happen inadvertently, usually.
But who's accountable then? If it's so busy there, you would think that another military boat or someone would have been able to intervene. Who's responsible?
Well, it's great. We're all very happy that the sailors are back, that the situation didn't escalate. I think the secondary question now has to be asked, who is planning this navigation trip? So if you're transiting from Kuwait to Bahrain, there is no reason to be going 100 miles offshore unless you are taking the most direct route in order to save fuel costs. I think the prudent course of action for smaller vessels like this, and at a time of increased tension between the United States and Iran over the pending nuclear deal and the release of the sanctions, is for these ships to stay well clear of Iranian territorial waters. The way you do that is you hug the coastline as you go south, so you're transiting along Kuwaiti national waters or Saudi national waters, then into Bahraini national waters. Those are all allies of the United States. There's no conflict there. So I think really U.S. Navy 5th Fleet has to answer for the navigation plan here. Why are you putting 2 small vessels in such close proximity to Iranian waters, creating an international incident where you really didn't need to?
All right. Now, Iran very quickly accused the sailors of trespassing, and now they're demanding an apology from the United States. Chris, just how easily could this have escalated into something much more serious?
It could easily have escalated, and I'll tell you, having been there on a number of occasions, I've seen personally a lot of situations where it did escalate, and fortunately this didn't wind up in a shooting. Just very briefly, I hope your audience understands Iran is not a unitary political actor. There are hardliners within Iran, there are moderates within Iran. Farsi is occupied by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. I think they were trying to incite an incident to torpedo the nuclear deal. I think this is really more than anything about domestic Iranian political disagreements, more so than an Iran versus United States confrontation.
Still, there has been a lot of tension between the U.S. and Iran in the Persian Gulf. From a diplomatic standpoint, you know, now it seems that things are settled and perhaps it wasn't that big of a deal, but how crucial was this exchange?
I mean, it's very crucial from the American perspective to be reminded that we have a significant military footprint in the Persian Gulf. If the United States and Iran are going to fight, nobody wants that, but that ought to be a considered decision by political civilian leadership rather than a mistake by military actors. I know it's a long time ago, but 1988, the U.S. Navy shot down an Iranian Airbus because we simply didn't have our navigation and radar picture squared away. We thought it was a military aircraft. In fact, it was a civilian aircraft. We killed several hundred Iranian civilians. The last thing the United States Navy wants to do is to inadvertently start a shooting conflict with the Iranian Navy. That's why I think U.S. Navy leadership at 5th Fleet in Bahrain needs to take a secondary assessment of navigation plans for U.S. ships transiting so we don't inadvertently start something that everyone will regret.
All right, Chris Harmer, thank you very much.
Thank you.